Okay, this is lesson 7.1b. It's the second half of lesson 7.1, writing and solving one-step inequalities with multiplication and division. In the first one, 7.1a, you did addition and subtraction. In 7.1b, it's multiplication and division. Okay, so solving inequalities involving multiplication first. We're going to do multiplication, and then down here towards the bottom, we're going to do division. All right, so beginning with multiplication. When an inequality contains multiplication, you're going to solve by dividing, okay? When an inequality contains multiplication, solve by dividing both sides of the inequality sign by the number. Okay, but if you multiply or if you divide both sides by a negative number, you must also reverse the inequality symbol. All right, let's read all of that. Now that it's all filled in, let's just read the whole thing. When an inequality contains multiplication, you solve the inequality by dividing both sides of the inequality sign by the number. If you have to divide both sides by a negative number, you must also reverse the inequality symbol. Let me show you what that means. In this first one, we are not going to have a negative number. In the second one, we are, okay? So here's what you have to do. Here's your variable a, and it is being multiplied times 6, okay? This is 6a is greater than or equal to 42. This inequality contains multiplication because when you have the 6 right next to the letter, that is 6 times a, okay? That's you're multiplying the variable a times 6. To solve that, I'm going to divide by the 6. So I'm going to divide both sides by 6. Okay? Now, 6 is positive, so I'm dividing by a positive number. So I'm just going to keep the inequality exactly the way it was. It's pointing greater than towards the a, and I'm going to leave the greater than sign in that direction. 6 divided by 6 is 1. So that leaves me with 1a, or a. 42 divided by 6 is 7. So the solution to 6a is greater than or equal to 42. A has to be greater than or equal to 7. So we're going to graph that. Because of the equal sign, I'm going to use a closed circle. And then the greater than, or the open side, the greater than side is pointing towards the a. So I want all the numbers greater than or equal to 7. Okay? Now, let's do this when we have to divide by a negative number. Here we have 84 is less than negative 12z. Again, that means z is being multiplied times negative 12. There's my variable, and what is happening to the variable? Z is being multiplied times negative 12. To solve that, I need to divide by negative 12 on both sides of the inequality symbol. Well, if I divide by a negative, right? If you divide both sides by a negative number, you must reverse the inequality symbol. That means right now it's pointing, that's the pointy side is towards the 84. I'm going to reverse the inequality symbol. Okay, so now I just flip it over. Because I divided by a negative, I reverse the inequality symbol, okay? So 84 divided by negative 12 is negative 7. Because a positive divided by a negative is a negative. Now negative 12 divided by negative 12 is 1. So on this side, I get 1z, which is z. So the solution is negative 7 is greater than z. So I find my negative 7 and I put an open circle, and the tiny pointy side is pointing towards the z, so I'm getting the z has to be smaller than -7. Okay? The key here when you are solving inequalities that are multiplication problems, you are going to divide, but if you have to divide both sides by a negative number, you have to remember to reverse the inequality symbol. Okay? Now, we're going to go to inequalities involving division, and the rules are the same. So we'll just solve some of these. When an inequality contains division, solve by multiplying both sides of the inequality sign by the number. But the same rule, if you have to multiply both sides by a negative number, you must also reverse the inequality symbol. So let's work on some of those. On this side, we have 2 is greater than y divided by 2. So there's our variable y, and what is happening to our variable is being divided by 2. To undo dividing by 2, we multiply. That's called the inverse of dividing. The inverse operation of dividing is multiplying. So I'm going to multiply times 2, but I have to do it to both sides. But I'm multiplying by a positive number. So I'm going to keep the inequality symbol exactly the same as it was. Now 2 times 2 is 4. And then on this side, this is going to be what basically if I put the 1 under here, I get 2y over 2. Well, 2 over 2 is 1. 1y is basically y, right? So 4 is greater than y. I'm going to find my 4. And the y, pointy side of the less than side is pointing towards the y. So I want the less than numbers. So again, if I have division, this is y divided by 2. If I have division in my inequality, I'm going to multiply times the 2. Y is being divided by 2. To undo that, I'm going to do the inverse, which is to multiply by 2. But as long as I'm multiplying by a positive number, the inequality symbol just stays the way it is. Let's look at this side where I'm going to need to multiply by a negative number, okay? This says z, there's my variable, divided by -8 is less than or equal to 1. Here we have z being divided by -8. To solve that, I have to multiply times -8. Remember, if I have to multiply or divide both sides of the inequality by a negative number, I have to reverse my inequality symbol. And here I'm going to multiply both sides times -8. I have to reverse my inequality symbol. That means I have to flip it over, okay? So on this side, these -8s are going to cancel because you're going to get -8 divided by -8, which is 1. And 1z is z. 1 times -8, a positive times a negative is a negative. 1 times 8 is 8. So I get z is greater than or equal to -8. The important thing to remember is that if you have to multiply by a negative number, you have to reverse the symbol or flip it over. I'm going to find my -8. I'm going to make my closed circle because of this little line. -8 is included in the solution. The big side or greater than side is pointing towards the z. So it's all of the numbers greater than or equal to -8. Okay, so that is solving one-step inequalities with multiplication and division. The important thing to remember with multiplication and division is if you have to multiply or divide both sides of an inequality by a negative number, you have to reverse the inequality. And that is 7.1b.